People come to you because you're the best option. You have to
Yeah.
keep being the best option because they have a chance of leaving.
You're listening to This Week in No Code plus AI, with weekly episodes sharing the latest advancements of AI, plus exclusive interviews, founders using these tools. So without any further ado, let's get started. Welcome to This Week in No Code and AI. I'm your host, JJ England, here with David Pale, my co-host. David, where in the world are you this week?
I am in Victoria, British Columbia today.
Fantastic. And I'm actually jetting over to Italy tomorrow for our offsite with Softer. So we're traveling podcasters now.
Traveling. Where in the world in no code are we?
There we go. Well, we have another exciting show for you this week in No Code plus AI. We have a slate full of news, especially some breaking news that just was announced. And then we're going to bring on the CEO of Toddle, a platform, a no-code platform that just raised $4.3 million and has decided to go open source. So we're going to bring on the CEO to talk about the raise, his decision behind open source, all that adds to our ecosystem. But first, let's get started with this week's news of the week.
Yeah, well, I think our theme of the week is open source, is we're going to start the news off with the introduction of Llama 3.1, Facebook's new open source 405 billion parameter model.
Wow.
Incredibly powerful, rivals the scale and features and complexity of 4 Omega, GPT-4o. It is a crazy powerful model that you can run on your own, you can tweak on your own, that has big input windows, big output windows, that supports synthetic data for training. Basically, what are the stats? They trained this model on 15 trillion tokens.
Using 16,000 H100 GPUs.
This is a huge investment for Meta to then just release out into the open. And they really are like, hey, no. Zuckerberg has said, I don't believe AI should live in the hands of one company. And he's taking that to heart. He's just saying, hey, go ahead, run this. And then you can build your own models off of it. They call this model distillation. You're pulling the smaller models so you can be more efficient. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's a really fun time. I love to see that it's happening. I do agree that, we should have more control over these and we should be able to, do more with it. And then this gives us a great option for that. I'd like to see him putting his money where his mouth is. Zuck has had a come up, let me tell you. Zuck
Yeah.
from like 5 years ago to where he is now. He looks like he's younger, he's
Yeah, I
happier.
know.
Whatever it is, keep on going, Zuck, because you're doing a great job with that.
Yeah.
In news also this week, we had OpenAI's release
Yeah.
of GPT-4o
Oh,
Mini.
mini.
So it's priced at
This is their
15 cents.
response directly to
You're going open source, but we're going mini.
yeah. That's their
Priced
model.
at 15 cents per million input tokens and 60 cents per million output
This
tokens.
is 101% the cost of GPT-4 or
That's
4o.
nuts. And I mean, and that was what, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, we were
Oh,
already seeing
yeah,
100%
exactly.
reduction. It achieves 82% of the massive multitask language understanding. It outputs GPT 3.5 Turbo and user chat preferences. There's a lot that goes into this. It supports up to 180,000 tokens. So it seems like one of those things where it's like they just saw so much usage of just like the everyday task, and they're like, what we have given you is so overkill. Let's just really scale this back to exactly what you need. So like you're more efficient and we're more efficient, and you just pay less.
Yeah, we've heard that the 4.0 mini does better than 3.5 turbo, but not as good as the 4.0 standard.
Sure.
Right. So don't switch all of them over to 4.0 mini. But when you can, I mean, this is pretty fantastic. These things are just
Yeah.
moving so fast. I'm not in it enough to really feel the difference between these things. I think we're in stepwise land, right? Like 3 to 4 was huge.
Yeah.
4 to 5 will also be huge. But at the moment, we're kind of just
Yeah.
ratcheting our way up.
4.0
Yeah.
mini, it's little
Yeah.
steps. But I
Yeah.
mean, little steps, again, it was 100% decrease in price. So, and that's a little step.
Yeah, basically. Effectively free compared to the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, cheaper is better with better performance. So Yeah. I don't really know many people using Llama, but I'm sure like at bigger companies where they have a tech team, they're running that
Yeah.
which is cool. But I don't know. For some reason, I still don't trust either Sam Altman or Mark Zuckerberg. I don't know. There's just someone at that level that's like they're in it for their own good at some point, but maybe not. I don't know.
Sure. What's going on
Uh,
with AI companies using YouTube data
right.
again to train?
Yeah. So basically, there has been some evidence that people have found and people have pointed to that lots of popular model, AI, Apple, NVIDIA, Anthropic, and Salesforce, they have all been accused of basically stealing data from YouTube and creators who have posted videos to YouTube
Yep.
um, in their training models.
Yeah,
Right,
they're
they're using the
saying, what?
subtitle databases.
Subtitles from 173,000 YouTube videos across 48,000 channels were
Yeah.
supposedly used.
And they're talking that these translations are being used, uh, and that, the creators are getting pissed that these companies are using this data, building powerful, valuable tools, um,
I'm sure
and they're
YouTube's
not getting
pissed as well.
compensated. Yeah, it feels like
Yeah.
that.
Especially with Google kind of being a little bit behind the curve and their search engine declining and everyone's just taking their data that they're not doing much with. Ooh, it's a tough time.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the last news. We're speeding on through this.
It's a big one. It just dropped today that Stripe has acquired LemonSqueezy. And for those of you that don't know, LemonSqueezy, it's like one of those smaller platforms that enabled transactions all over the world. It made it
They're a
easier
merchant
to
of record platform.
merchant of record platform. It made it easier to sell things all over the world and then to do that properly and legally, right? And it was always really one of Stripe's, Achilles
Yeah.
heels because they never did it really well. But Lemon Squeezy being a smaller company, they had great support, they had a great product, and we're always cheering for them because they're a smaller company going against the big one.
Yeah.
Well, the big one ain't the smaller one,
Yeah.
which is good and bad. It was a news that came out just today, which is Friday, and it's hot off the press. David, what do you think of this?
I think it's a good signal that Lemon Squeezy built a great product. It
Sure,
also means that Stripe is now going to offer merchant of record services,
sure.
which is good for the whole ecosystem and everyone's compliance.
Yeah.
I'm happy for them. This is great. No bad news here.
All right. Yeah, I think in some ways you're rooting for the small company, and that small company just got an exit, and they just got a lot of money, and so that's good for them, right? We just hope that they keep the same vibes and the same, benefits that this lemon squeezy was providing because they were doing a great job with a great product. And so hopefully Stripe, sees this almost like the Zapier no code operator acquisition of like, we're just going to hire your team. You have all this
No, I think this
expertise.
is a
You do
real
have some tech.
business. This is a real
Yeah.
business play.
You have your tech in place. You have all these things in place. Let's expedite this process. We know we're weak here. Let's assume you.
Yeah, that's great. Well, let's bring up Andreas. Well, we're super excited to welcome back Andreas on a big congratulatory welcome back after a nice announcement of a fundraise. Congratulations, Andreas. Happy to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I thank you for coming back. It's great to see you, and it's also great to hear of, the success of adding more money. However you see it, it's a great thing. It's a great accomplishment. Why did that come about? Did you just say, "Hey, we need more money one day," or we have these goals that we want to achieve? What was the purpose behind the race?
So we always knew that we were gonna raise another round. We raised the pre-seed round in 2022, a much smaller one, and we always knew we were gonna raise another round. We didn't expect it to quite happen so soon because we had some money left in the bank. But things were going great. We had a really strong community that was growing really fast, and we began to have some really good customer cases as well. And obviously, when you're building a tool like Toddle or any no-code tool, it takes a while most of the time because people are going to sign up and then they're going to try it for a while, then they're going to learn it, and then eventually they're going to find a project that they want to build.
And that's
And in
best
our
case scenario.
case, in Toddle case, it's free until you like until you need to go public and like put a domain on it. Like you can publish and run your app for free for a long time. So you don't really need to pay until you're ready to launch your business. And therefore there's quite a long lead time until we get customers. And that's by design, like that's on purpose, right? But it also means there's a little bit of a time. But it went much faster than we thought. People were really, really excited about it, and we grew a strong community really early on. And so a lot of the investors we talked to early and last round was very interested in sort of having a continuing that conversation. And with all that sort of buzz, we said, okay, let's go and let's raise it now, because I think we have what we need. And we ended up raising with an existing fund that was in for a small ticket in the first one called Inventure out of Finland. And then we also got a new fund in, Lifeline Ventures, to join them. And then one of our other funds from the first round, Pre-Seed Ventures, also joined in. So it's really good to have like a really strong group of funds and people that we already work with and kind of believe and understands what Toddle is.
They believe from the beginning.
Yeah. We were also really lucky that David Kunyev, the Typeform founder, joined us as well as an angel investor. So he knows the market a bit and has a really good understanding. So that was really cool. He wanted to join.
For our listeners that don't know what Toddle is, can you give them an elevator pitch?
Absolutely. So Toddle is a no-code platform that lets you build applications, web applications, without the need to write code. And it's specifically designed for professionals. So the specific part of the market we're targeting is people who are building SaaS applications who want them to scale and grow. So maybe you're bootstrapping, maybe you're going for venture funding. But you're looking for this to be something that can grow, something you can hire a team that supports and actually can scale to many, many thousands, if not 100,000 of users.
As you navigated that pitch, has your target market changed at all? Like, are you looking for no coders? Are you looking for coders, or just people building? It doesn't matter what.
I think what we sort of realized is that we sit almost right in the middle, where about half our users are coming from the no-code world and half of them are coming from the code world. So we have a lot where it's the first no-code tool they've used, and we have a lot that's used literally all of the no-code tools. Like we have some like, I tried Client, I tried Software, I tried Bubble, I tried WeWeb. Like they went the whole 9 yards, right? And they have those sort of own priorities. And what Toddle kind of offers is this like level of flexibility in what you can do and the many ways you can do it and the complexity of what you can build, and still while staying in no code. Like it's still not saying, oh, now you have to go and write code for all your logic, right?
Who's an easier customer to satisfy?
That's a good question. I think it does depend a little bit. Early on, actually, coders can often be quite easier in the sense that they're sort of like just the basics of like, okay, I can actually just drag stuff around. But later on, their requirements are much more strict, right? They're like, okay, but I need to do this thing and this thing and this thing, and can I do this and this and this, right? And with Toddle, it can do a ton out of the box. There's still functionality like that doesn't, like there's a million browser APIs and we don't support all of them yet. So you can extend Toddle and build your own actions into it and then use them there. And from coders, that sort of that's something they usually reach really early because people are like, I want to connect a USB device to my web browser. Can I do that in Toddle? I'm like, yes, but it's not exactly our happy path. The first thing we added support for, right?
Yeah, you didn't think, oh, I need to build a USB module as feature number 1, and then maybe we'll get that.
Yeah, we'll start with that, and then we'll do styling later. Yeah, no, we went the other way around. With no coders, I find that Toddle is often a little bit different than other platforms, and obviously, no code is almost so broad a term now that it's hard to explain what it even really means, other than you're not writing code, right? But the tools are very different. But for no coders, I think a lot of times they're a little bit surprised about how bare bones Toddle is. Like it is kind of, you start with, you can add HTML elements and you can style them. If you want something more complex, you can build things that are more complex, but it's a very much give you the fundamental building blocks of the web, where other platforms are a lot more like, here's a user table, right? Or here's a data table, like, and it does everything, but it's always going to work the same way. And in Toddle, we are more like encouraging people to build that. And we do then have a package system. So if you don't want to build everything from scratch, other people in the community have built stuff and you can like use that in your project, right?
Yeah.
But the platform itself, like it doesn't even have like any sort of base. It doesn't even have tabs. If you want to add tabs, you're going to have to build them or install a package. It's sort
I
of
see.
that level. If it's not in the web platform, Toddle doesn't ship with it.
Yeah.
So with the new money in, first, how much was it? And then what are your goals to accomplish with this new money?
Yeah. So we raised $4.3 million.
That
And
is
I mean, the
seed?
goal,
That's a seed.
that's a seed round. Yeah. And so the goal here really is what Toddle's mission is, which is we want to redefine the way you build visual applications, right? And obviously our focus is on web applications. But we strongly believe that this idea of having better tools and having visual tools to build applications is something that can work everywhere. So while we don't have any plans of building mobile applications, there are great tools like Flutterflow already doing good work there. I think it's so very early in this timeline of building this way that I'm hoping we'll see many, many more apps, and I hope Toddle will eventually inspire many, many more companies to build the similar kind of tools. And as I say, if you want to do that, if you want to actually change the way we do that, and not just empower a few people, but really fundamentally change the sort of mainstream idea of what programming can be. That's a big mission, right?
Yeah.
And obviously requires some funding to get started, but it also requires a community. It requires that a large group of people are putting in an enormous amount of work. So I think it's a bigger problem than a single company can handle or can solve, even just for building web apps. So we want to use that to grow. We want to grow our community, the number of people who are building in Toddle, the number of people who are contributing packages and all sorts of things you can use in Toddle, and all the people who are building like tutorials and writing guides and all that. Like the whole community around a tool is such a critical part of whether it has success. So that's really where our focus is.
Is that part of the reason to go open source?
It absolutely is. So there was, for a long time, it's not really a new decision. Like from we started, this is something that we had conversations about. It wasn't always 100% clear we were going to go this way. It was a conversation. I think I expected it to be a decision we were going to make, but I wasn't quite sure. Because there are also companies that somewhat managed to get away with building developer tools at scale in closed source. There's just not very many. I think the only one I can really think about if you think mainstream, is really something like Microsoft have built a few of them. And in most cases, then they've gone open source later, right?
Yeah.
So it was something we kind of always had in mind that we were going to do. And there's a few reasons why. One of them is that for a lot of customers, we're basically asking them, please go and bet your whole company on us, right? Like you're going to build your main product in Toddle.
Yeah.
And like, if you have expectation or aspirations to scale that to be a massive SaaS company at some point, right? The very idea that your company is completely financially tied into our company is going to be very scary for a lot of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of company, that's going to be a no-go right away. They're not even going to entertain the conversation of building their product on someone else's proprietary software.
Right.
And I get it. Like I would be very hesitant to do that as well.
Yeah. I think that's where the whole export your code thing comes in, is like, it makes you feel a lot better. It's like, okay, as long as you allow me to export my code, at least I could take and go elsewhere, and I'm not betting as much on you. Right?
Yes, I think, well, at least that's the story, I would say.
Sure.
And I understand why a lot of people feel that way. That was never an option for us because we've been there. Like all of us have tried before inheriting code from just other dev teams. And the headache and the lock-in you can get just from that. And then if this code should be generated from a no-code tool, right? Like the quality is probably not like Toddle is not meant to generate clean, very readable code. That's not the point of it. It's meant to generate very optimized code that runs really fast in the browser, right? The readability is not really a priority. Like it could be done for sure, but that's not really what we're going for. As a result, export would mean that you can run it without Toddle, but you can't build it without Toddle, at least not efficiently. And I think that's probably true everywhere. It's not a hard truth. Like obviously, if code comes out, it's technically possible. But I don't think it's feasible that you just pick up where you left off with your no-code tool and keep going. And I think every story I've heard so far says that's not really something you do. So it fundamentally doesn't really
it seems
change.
like you have,
yeah.
Like you'd have to build it in some way on the platform side that you can connect things without someone actually connecting things. And so there is a decision you have to make on how things work that may or may not be obvious to whoever might be reading it.
Yeah.
Right. And this, like in any possible combination of things. And so there's always something in the middle of connecting it.
Exactly, right? Like the way we structure the sort of underlining language, like we build a sort of a custom language for Toddle that then can be like converted into HTML, CSS, and JavaScript again. And the point of that language is optimized for being a good language for a visual editor, which is not the same as being good language for text.
Yeah.
Like those are not the same thing. Like what makes something easily understandable visual is not the same as necessarily what translates to text. So those two are just at least kind of conflicting requirements. So for us, if we actually wanted to solve this problem of saying, no, you own the application you build in Toddle, like it's yours, it has to be yours, right? But if you own it, but you can't like modify it, or you can't host it where you want, or you can't make any changes without, like, that's not really owning it, right? And most companies know that. I think most experienced engineer looking at code exporters is going to see it as a way of doing self-hosting, but they're not going to see it as an eject mechanism if they are no longer bought into the company behind it, right?
Yeah.
And that's really what we wanted to do. We want to say, well, if people are going to build really bet on us and build large things, there has to be a way for them to run this entirely without the company.
So that
And
even
then
the
our
editor,
job, sorry?
even the editor, they can run, or just
So there's a lot of work ahead of us in the coming months to make that happen, because right now the platform code we use for hosting and the editor and backend and everything is kind of integrated. So we're going to start stripping that apart. And so there's a part of it that's the open source, but it's going to allow you both to run your Toddle application. And since the editor is also a Toddle application, that's kind of half of that. And then there's the actual backend for how you store and your data on the backend. We're gonna open source that as well. So you'll be able to just take our software, run it on your own service, and that'll allow you to build your application, to ship it and host it wherever you want.
So how does that change your business model?
Yeah. So it does a few things to our business model. And because obviously, I mean, it's somewhat new for no-code, at least in the app development space. But the idea of open source business is not that new. Right? There's a lot of them. And if you're looking at developer tools, it's almost all of them.
Yeah,
like there's
like
very,
MongoDB,
very few that are not.
Huge open source public company. They're open source technically, but they're making a lot of money on hosting. And
exactly, and we're using Superbase ourselves right now for the backend of Toddle, and that is a complete open source company. And I think Paul Cobblestone, the CEO there, and like they did a really good work of also expressing why they think that's important, right? And I think that mentality is the right one. And what it really does is you have to make sure that people come to you because you're the best option. You have to keep being the best option because they have a chance of leaving. And on one side, that means that as a company, you don't have the lock-in or the stickiness, as someone always likes to say it, as if the word stickiness sounds like a good thing. but the stickiness of your customers are saying, well, they chose us, so they have to stay. Instead, you have to keep making sure that you're the best option. But
Yeah.
I think you kind of have to do that anyway. Like, I think if you're the only other option is to try and get people locked in for as long as time. The second they realize what's going on and they try to leave and it's difficult, they're never coming back. Like, nobody's ever going to do that if you had a bad experience, right? So I think if you want to keep growing and keep being relevant, you have to keep being the best in your sector. And since we're both building the open source version, like the open source editor and language, and also the hosting platform, we have a massive head start, right? So I'm not worried about the business side of it. I think actually it's going to help. I think we're going to see a lot more people using Toddle. I think we'll see a lot of people using it without being our customers and just as users and using the open source model. And I think they are going to contribute packages, and I think they're going to help make Toddle better, and they're going to contribute to the editor, and they're overall going to make it a much better platform.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about that.
That is exciting. One of the cool things that I love is, the whole lock-in thing. That's a real thing. Many people feel that way about Bubble, and sometimes that's why they get the criticism of, it's really good for MVPs, but once you need a really, really big app that you need to rely on and pass all these security regulations, all that kind of stuff, it just doesn't fit because you can't export the code, you can't bring it on-prem, you can't do any of this stuff, right? And so then everyone rushes over to, all right, now I need to find a platform where you can export the code. So that way I can bring it on-prem and like really kind of keep going with that, right? But then to your point, it's like, well, you're exporting spaghetti maybe, right? And so what is that really helping you? And then the third option here is, well, you're not going to export it. You're going to keep doing what you're doing because we built it exactly this way, but you could host it yourself, bring it on-prem and still have all the capability of controlling this fully and owning it, but in the best of all worlds, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
I think that's the best model. I think it is. And I think more companies should consider that. We're not the first one by any means to do that. But I think it's the right idea. And I think, I'm not worried about our business part of it. I think it's going to be a net positive by far. But I think also there is a big split. There's a massive gap when you look at no-code platforms and then developer tools, right? Because even developer tools like databases that didn't necessarily need to be open source. Like, there's a lot of database companies that could have built entirely proprietary software, but they're almost all of them open source. And most people are never going to host them themselves, because why would you? Like, I don't think I'm ever going to self-host Superbase. Why would I do that? The pricing is very fair. It kind of has to be for them to have a business model. So I don't think I'm ever not going to just use their hosting.
And this is coming from an engineer that knows how to host it properly if he needed to.
Yeah. No, I mean, they did a good job. It's not that hard if you know how to get it up and running, right? But I think the reason why you see a little bit less of that in the no-code space is because obviously most people going into no-code don't know how to host this. Like, that would have been a deal breaker, beginning to do it themselves, right?
Right.
And don't necessarily haven't necessarily had those experiences of trying software and having to switch off at late time, or like the risk of betting on a technology and realizing that you need to make changes, or for some reason now the price changes, and what are you going to do about that, right? So I think that's probably also why you see so many of them in the no-code space. Like, why there's such a difference between dev tools for no-code and dev tools for the sort of code world.
Yeah. And that's why I like to ask, like, what you've learned about the customers. Building for these two audiences are usually pretty different, right? And like, it's hard. Like, I know you came from the code world and without knowing the no code world as intimately as the no coders who are looking for better, what they feel like are dev tools, but they seem the same, but they're pretty different.
Yeah. And certainly, but I also think that no code is very broad. So I almost think there's two almost like categories that are people. There's a lot of people who are just developers, like any developer you'll meet writing code, and literally the personality is the same, the sort of temper is the same, The only real difference is that they started using a visual programming language and they liked it, so they never left, right?
Yeah.
But it's the same conversations we have with them about, I had a problem doing this layout, or why is Flexbox always being weird? And this, like it, when you talk to them, it's the
Yeah.
same conversation, right? You're speaking the same language most of the time.
Yeah.
And they are in here because they love it. Like they're doing this because they like building. So the journey is just as important as the end product for them. And they are by far the ones that Toddle most appeals to. The other
Cool.
group are the sort of more, I want an app. I don't really care how I
Yeah.
would, if I had money, I would pay someone to do it. Or if,
Right.
if I had money and
Yeah.
infinite money and time, I would just hire someone to do it, because that's not really what I want to spend my time on, but I do want to have it. And it's great that I can make it myself. Right. And that group, I don't think Toddle is a great fit for in general. There are
Yeah,
exceptions,
agreed.
like sometimes, right?
Great.
But I
Sure.
think there are many tools that'll get you an app so much faster, and
Right.
that's much easier to learn. And all you have to do is say, well, maybe this thing doesn't animate in just the way I had hoped for, but actually I just kind of want to get this thing out the door so it does really
Yeah.
well. And there are tools that are much better for that than Toddle. Like if you want to build something in a week and have it out and then not really think about it, they're a great platform for that. But Toddle is certainly not one of them.
Yeah,
Right.
I think this
With
makes a
Toddle, it's
lot.
because you want to be a developer. I mean, it's really built for developers, but that doesn't necessarily mean someone who's been coding for a lot of years. But it means someone that see themselves as the person building it, right? Like
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
want an
More
app
of a
and
craftsman than
Exactly, right.
a just app launch indie hacker, I guess. Oh, maybe not indie hacker, but like just someone
Yeah.
who wants an app out there, but someone who loves the craft.
A lot of them indie hackers as well, right? But a lot of them are like being indie hackers, not just because they like the business side, but also because they like the software side, right?
Yeah.
And I think if you don't enjoy the journey, if you don't care about building it and care about building that user experience and making sure it's you building it for the user, I mean, then I don't think it's the best tool. There are things that'll make you do it quicker.
Yeah, and I think where this is more important for you too as well is you're meant for professional apps. You're meant for enterprise apps, like real apps, right? And so those apps just need more. They need that ownership,
Yeah.
otherwise they're just not going to use it in the beginning. And so I think that's also why this just makes so much sense on your part, and it's so exciting.
Well, one question as we were just chatting, I just don't know the answer to. Like, once you're open source, what prevents someone to say, "Oh, great, I'm going to take this, modify it, and launch my own thing on
Make
top of it"?
Toddle.
What prevents someone from doing that, or is that just kind of a risk in the open source world?
It's super risk, and you don't even have to be like someone. You can just say Amazon because it's always them. Yeah. And it's a serious risk, and it's something we had conversations about quite a lot. There's a lot of companies that are developing specific new types of licenses that are what they call source available, because open source have a very specific meaning and it has some very specific requirements. There are different licenses, but it has some very specific requirements to what that means. And so there's several companies that sort of started out open source and actually then pulled back a bit because they found out that actually now Amazon offers like a hosted version of their software, and if you're already on Amazon, why wouldn't you just spin that up? Why go to a second?
Right.
Like you're already using them for your compute, etc. Right?
Mm.
So I think that's honestly a serious problem, and it's something we had a lot of conversations about.
Yeah.
We have a couple of years before I think Amazon is gonna run Toddle apps. I mean, hopefully they'll do it soon.
Yeah.
But that's a real milestone. So we have a couple of years to get an advantage.
Yeah.
Because
Grow your
we have a lot of
community,
things
grow your
that
moats.
we have a lot of ideas for what we can do for our hosting platform that we can do better than anyone just starting out. I think there's a lot of things we can do around app and site analytics that, because we're running the platform and the open source, we can kind of do things that are going to be a lot better than just installing a third-party provider. There's a lot of different things that we can do to make sure that our hosting platform is still the best way to host a Toddle app, right? And that's something we're gonna keep investing, make sure that we are just the best place. But at the same time, it is important that there's an alternative, and people could, and then we'll be in competition with someone who's essentially just using our platform. I do think that if it's not a major player like Amazon, like if it's not someone of that size, users are generally going to say, well, even if I have to pay like 30% more for Toddle, I'm going to go get hosted by the people who build the software rather than trusting someone who just randomly cloned it, right?
Yeah. Well, I can't let you get out of here without asking about AI. So
Good.
I think we asked you about last. I think we asked you it about last time too, but AI in Toddle, where are you at? Where's your positioning on, integrating it, not integrating it? How do you guys feel with AI in the next year?
So it is still a good question, but it's also and a popular one. I think that when I'm looking at AI today and where we are, the best way I can explain it is that we are seeing incredibly impressive things that AI can do. If you look at them exclusively as useful, then it's a somewhat smaller set of things it can do. I think one of the best quote I've seen is that everybody's super excited about generate content with AI. Nobody is excited about consuming content made by AI. Right. And I think that's kind of the same with Toddle. It's something we're obviously adding AI features. I actually have been working on adding some Toddle content generation, code generation, and actually like in a week you can get a lot because the new models are very impressive. And right now we're sort of running it through some testing with our what we call our heroes, some of the biggest contributors in our community. And currently, sort of the take is that it's really impressive and it's very fun and it works really well. I personally think it's one of the best cases I've seen, but it's not particularly useful for actually building apps because what always happens with AI is it builds something that's really good. It's just not the thing you wanted.
Right.
And it's just like,
that's right.
It's a great looking login screen. It doesn't look like anything else I've built. Or, I mean, I understand why you would build this given what I said, and it looks really cool, but it was not at all what I meant.
If the prompt a commensurate amount of time as it would to build, it would not be impressive. It would not be helpful. Right? Like it's only cool because it's so fast.
Yeah. I think that's part of it. And I think what we're now looking at is that we're going to release this in a way where it's sort of very clear that like, cause the use cases, I'm like, I was very interested, like if I'm doing a demo video, like this is going to save me like 5 minutes of that video. Of me building UI that I didn't really need to build to make the point about APIs that I was going to make in this video, right?
Yeah.
And that's a really good use case. Like it's really great because I don't want to say, and I built some UI earlier because that's also a bit like you want people to be able to start from scratch and follow along.
Yeah.
So if you just say, and like, make me a login screen, right? And then I can show how authentication works. That's really good for that kind of thing. If you're learning Toddle for the first time, I think that could be really powerful. You don't necessarily, maybe you don't know anything about HTML, CSS, never built a login form before. That might be a really good way to use sort of to not focus on that part, but focus on the logic you wanted to learn, right? In terms of actually building your applications.
But blank page.
Yeah.
It helps you get over the blank page.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, I don't think we're ever going to use it in the Toddle project because you'd spend more time trying to get the prompt to do what you want than it would take to build it, right? Like it is a no-code tool. It's very fast to build UI. Like you can build the right thing the first time, right? I think it's the same thing I kind of had with the Figma AI when it came out a little bit. It's like using AI for design is kind of like doing pair designing where you sit and tell a designer what to draw. Like like try to use human language to explain design, I mean, there's nothing about that process that makes me think this is great. Like, it's not.
Yeah,
It's
so
the
easy.
most inconvenient way to do design is try to talk people through what you want them to draw on screen, right? So I mean, for actual generating apps, I think that it's going to be quite successful for some applications. As we say, sometimes people want an app. They don't care about it, their app. They don't care about the details. They just want something that kind of works, they can ship. I
Mhm.
think AI is going to be huge there. I think if our audience, it's a lot more about you building the exact experience you want and the quality you build into it. And I think AI can be useful in some areas there, but it's not going to be the bit that generates your code or generates your app. It's going to be an assistant that can automate some things, maybe make some suggestions, but ultimately it's not going to be. I haven't seen anything yet that indicates it's going to be the main way you use a tool like Toddle.
Yeah, I agree
Well,
with that.
there we go. Thank you for coming on the show. Congrats again on the raise.
Yeah.
I'm
Thank you
super
very
excited
much.
about open source. For those looking to learn more about getting started with Toddle, how do they do that?
You can just go and sign up on our page. Go to toddle.dev, and you can sign up for free. You can start building for free. Even if you don't want to skip that, you can literally just click on the big image on the middle of the screen, and you can open the Toddle editor. You don't even need to sign in to get started poking around.
Right.
You can literally just click the big blue button on the front page, and you can go
Very
and
cool.
try out the editor and see how it works.
Awesome.
And if you want to learn a bit more about how it works and more in details, you can go and check out our YouTube series called First Week in Toddle.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you for coming on the show. Best of luck to you guys going forward. We'll bring you on again in the future to see how it's going. Until then, best of luck.
Thank you very
Excellent.
much.
Well, that was a great talk, as always, with Andreas. He's just one of those people that we love having on the podcast. He comes from that traditional background, but he also is in the no-code world. David, what do you think?
Great to have him. And I think that's all for this week. And we'll see you next week in NoCode.
See you next week in no-code, guys.